Subscribe our Nehra Classes YouTube channel to watch free live training sessions and to avail the membership facilities and additional perks, click the join button. So Vikas Nehra, welcome you all to our session number 3 of RHCSA version 10 training. The agenda of today's session would be, first of all, we will try to know how can we create the custom partitions at the time of installation of RHEL 10 in VMware or in Oracle VirtualBox. In the last session, we used the automated partitions. But in this session, I will tell you how can we create the partitions manually at the time of installation and what are the file systems which are required, which are mandatory in order to install the machine. Like what is the use of root, what is the use of boot partition, what is the use of swap partition, what is the use of EFI. So all these things I'm going to cover up. Then we will try to understand the prerequisites of SSH service. How can we actually connect our machine remotely through SSH? So in order to remotely access the machine, we have to use the SSH service, but there are some prerequisites like what is the package name which must be installed in our machine. We need to check whether the service is up and running. We need to check the firewall rules. So all those things we are going to cover up. And at the end, we will talk about the file system hierarchy in RHEL 10. So without wasting time, let's get started. So let me take you to my VMware workstation. All of you are aware of VMware workstation. In the last session, I have shown you the procedure. How can you actually download its setup file and how can you install it in your machine. Now let me create a fresh machine of RHEL 10 here. Create new virtual machine. I'll go with the custom settings. Click on next, then hardware, workstation 17.5 or later. Next, I will select the third option. I will install the operating system later. Next, Linux RHEL 9. You can go with RHEL 9 here. Then you need to give the virtual machine name. Let me mention here RHEL 10. Next, number of processors. Let me choose 4 number of processors.
Sir, can you zoom it?
Ajay, what is the question?
Can you zoom it, sir? The font is very small.
Sorry, I cannot zoom it. There is no such
Okay,
facility.
no issue. Okay, no issue.
You can watch the recording at the time of watching the recording. You can zoom it according to your
Okay,
requirements.
no issue. No
Okay.
issue.
I'll select here number of cores per processor as 2. Click next. Let me use 4 GB of RAM for this machine. Then there are multiple options available for the network connection. Here I am going to use NAT, Network Address Translation. So this is the option which allows the guest operating system to access the host computer, dial-up or external Ethernet connection using the host IP address. So I'll go with this one. Then next. Then we need to select the SCSI controller. We will go with the LSI logic, which is recommended one. We will talk about the controllers in the storage section. You don't need to worry about it. Then here we can select what type of disk we are going to use with this machine. Either we can use IDE or we can use SCSI or we can use SATA, but we should use NVMe, which is the recommended one. NVMe is the fastest disk that is used nowadays. So we will go with NVMe. We need a new virtual disk. So the first option, and here let me select the disk size as 40 GB. Next. Then customized hardware, and you need to go on CD DVD option. Click on use ISO image. Click on browse. Select RHEL 10 beta, the image which you downloaded earlier from internet, and you can close this wizard, click on finish. Now your machine is ready, your VM is ready. But in this VM you need to install the RHEL 10 operating system with the help of the ISO image. So this machine will first boot up with the help of the ISO image that we have attached. Now we need to power on this machine so that it can boot up from the ISO image. Now our machine is booting up with the help of the ISO image that we attached earlier. Here we need to select the first option, install Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10.0. We can select it with the help of the arrow keys, then press enter on the first option. Now files will load on RAM from the ISO image and it will start the installation wizard. This is the same procedure which we followed in the last session while installing the RHEL 10, where we did not create the partitions manually. We used the automatic option for the partitioning. Today, we will create the custom partitions. Look at this. Installer is starting. Here we need to select the language, English, India. In your case, you can select your country language there, which you want. I want to proceed. So we can just ignore this warning because this warning is for the beta iOS image that we are currently using. Keyboard layout is fine. We don't need to connect to Red Hat. That is also fine. The third option, installation destination. Click on this. It will show you the disk that you created earlier. So 40 GB of disk NVMe that we created earlier, that is showing up here in this option. Here, if you don't know how to create the partitions manually, or if you have no idea whether what type of partition should be there while installing the RHEL 10, you can just go with the first option, which is automatic. But in case if you want to create the partitions manually, you can easily do that. So if you have no idea, just click on done. If you manually want to create the partitions, you can select the second option, custom, create partitions manually. Select custom, then click on done. It will take you to this option where you can create the partitions. Here, either you can use LVM feature or you can use the standard partitions. What is LVM? Logical Volume Manager is a feature which helps us to resize the partitions later. So it is a good feature for us. That's why we are going to use this feature here while creating the partitions. What is LVM? You don't need to worry about it. We will cover everything in the storage management section. Select LVM here, then click on this plus sign. And first of all, you need to create the mount points here. So before I create the mount points, you have to keep in mind that 3 partitions are mandatory. 3 mount points are mandatory: root, /boot, and swap space. These 3 are mandatory in order to install any Linux operating system. So first of all, we are going to create the mount point as / or a root. Here you need to select the desired capacity. You can create the root partition of any size, but ideally it should be greater than 15 GB if you want that your machine should be properly working. Or I have another alternative for you. Create /root at the end. First of all, create /boot partition. Boot partition can vary from 512 MB to 1 GB. So either you can create 512 MB /boot partition, but I'm going to use the partition size as 1024 MB. because it will not create problems for you when you patch the machine. So our boot partition is ready. Always keep in mind your boot partition should be standard partition. So that's why it is showing up here standard partition. In case if you want to use it on LVM, you can select here LVM. Then click on plus sign again. Now create /boot/EFI. You can create it. You can keep the size as 512 MB. Click on add mount point. It will get created here. Then again click on this plus sign. Now create the swap space. So you need to select here swap. In the desired capacity option, you can mention the swap size. I'm going to use the swap size as 2048 MB. That means 2 GB. Why I'm going to use the size as 2 GB? Your swap space can be of any size, but ideally it should be equal to the RAM. Or in case if you have lesser space, you can create it as the half of the size of your RAM. And ideally, how much maximum size of swap we should use? It can be twice of the size of the RAM. So the maximum capacity of the swap partition is twice of the size of the RAM. The minimum capacity which you can use is half of the size of the RAM. But ideally, you should create the swap of same size as the size of your RAM. Okay. If you don't have sufficient space available on your disk, you can skip this swap space. It is not mandatory, but ideally you should create it. So I'm going to create the size of swap as the same size of my RAM. So I'm going to use this as 4096 because I'm using 4 GB of RAM in this machine. Click on add mount point. Have a look at this. So this swap is created on the LVM and the size is 4 GB. Now we have 34.5 GB of space remaining on our disk out of 40 GBs. So entire space we can use for the root mount point or the root file system. Click on plus sign, select slash here. In the size you can mention 34.5 G, add mount point. So we have used the entire space of the disk. Now have a look at these partitions. So these partitions are mandatory: root, boot and swap. This EFI is under root, but if you want, you can create it as a separate partition as well. If you want to create separate partitions for /var or /home, you can do that. You are free to do that. If you don't create them on a separate partition, they will be listed under this root file system. Okay, click on done, accept changes. Everything else is fine. Kdump is enabled, time zone is fine. In the software selection, make sure that you select the server with the GUI option. Click on done. Network and host name. You can mention the host name if you want. Let me mention the host name as Nehra Classes PC or Nehra Classes server, whatever you want. Click on apply. Click on done. Then click on root settings. If you want to disable the root account, you can keep disable root account option selected. If you want to enable it, you can select the enable root account option. Then define the root password. If you want the root user to log in through SSH remotely, just click here, allow root SSH login. Click on done. Then go on the user settings. Let's create a normal user as Vikas Nehra. I want to add this user in the wheel group. Wheel group means we want to assign super user privileges to this user or the admin privileges, so we can keep this checkbox selected. Then define the password for this user. Click on done, and begin with installation. This is how you can create the partitions or the mount points manually while installing the RHEL10 in your machine. Once your installation gets completed, you can take the snapshot of your machine. So this is how you can install RHEL10 either by using the automated mount points option, or you can create the mount points manually. Let this machine run. Okay. Now I'm going to show you how can you remotely access the machine. Let me show you the machine. Suppose we have a machine. This is a machine which is already there in our VMware, and I want to log in into this machine through SSH. So as I mentioned in the last session, you can use remote SSH tools like Putty, MobaXterm. There are many more. This machine is running inside VMware, and this is the local terminal of this RHEL10 machine, which I'm going to open. Suppose I want to access this machine remotely from any other network or from any other machine. So I would require the IP address of this machine. How can we check the IP address? The local IP address, in case if we are on the same network, and the public IP address would be required if we want to log in from the other network. So this is the local IP address of this machine, 192.168.229.128. So this IP address is needed if we want to remotely log in into this machine. So we can open any tool like MobaXterm or Putty. Click on session, click on SSH. In the remote host section, mention the IP address of this machine, which is 192.168.229.128. Then you can specify the username. I have already allowed the root user to log in through SSH, so I can mention here root. Click on OK, and we are able to log in into this machine from the MobaXterm. Why we are able to log in into this machine? Because SSH service is running there. There is a service running named SSHD. If you want to check the status of this service, you can execute systemctl status SSHD command. So this service is up and running. If this service is not running, we cannot log in remotely. And how can this service run? If the package is there. So there is a package, open SSH server. Let me show you. rpm-qa pipe grep open SSH. This command actually lists the packages which are installed in our machine, and here we are searching for open SSH. So open SSH server, this package is available in our machine. This package is already installed in this machine, and because this package is installed, that's why the service is running here. Without this package, we cannot start the service. So the package should be installed in this machine or in any machine where you want to do SSH, and the service must be running. One more thing which is very important, the machine firewall should allow the traffic from port number 22. How can we check that? Firewall-cmd command we can use for that. --list --all. Look at this. In the service section, SSH is showing up. This means firewall is allowing the traffic through SSH or from port number 22. That's why we are able to log in. But we did not make these changes. How can the package is installed, how the service is running, how firewall is allowing the traffic? It is because we selected the option server with GUI. In that mode, open SSH package will get installed, the service will start, and automatically firewall rules will be added there. In case if you do the installation in the minimal mode, you have to manually follow these steps. So what are the steps? In the first step, you have to install the open SSH package in your machine. open SSH server package. After that, you have to start the service, start and enable SSHD service. And the third option is, third step is allow traffic from port 22 in firewall. So these 3 steps you have to manually follow in case if the open SSH server package is not there in your machine. Okay, let me show you. These are the steps. You have to verify whether the package is there or not. If it is not there, you need to install it manually. You don't need to worry about it. If you are not getting anything related to this, that's okay. If you are new, we will cover everything. You don't need to worry. In the upcoming sessions, you will know how to do the package management, how can we install the packages, all those things, how can we configure the repositories, how can we start or enable the services, how can we check the firewall rules, and how can we add the rules in the firewall. So these things we will cover up, but you must be aware before I take you to the advanced topics. Okay. So these are the steps which you can follow. Okay. Now we will talk about the file system hierarchy in RHEL 10. If you run the ls command is used to list the files or directories. If I run this command on the root directory, this root or this slash is the parent directory in Linux. This slash is the parent directory of all directories. And what do we call it? It is also known as root directory. Okay. There are 3 types of root in Linux. This slash is the root directory. We have one more directory, slash root. This slash root is the home directory of the root user. And third is the root user. There are 3 roots in any Linux machine. This slash is the root directory or the top level directory. Inside this we have root directory. So the complete path name is slash root. Slash root is the home directory of the root user. And there is a root user as well. This is the user with which we are logged in. So what do we call it? This is the shell prompt. In this shell prompt, the first name that is showing up here, it is the user account name with which we are logged in. We are logged in from the root user account, so root is showing up there. Then we have the machine host name. Machine host name and the username are separated by @. So @ sign is just to separate the user and the machine. Then there is a tilde sign. This tilde sign is showing the present working directory. The present working directory is the slash root. If we go to the TMP directory, TMP will show up here. So this location actually tells us where we are actually working in the machine. So it shows the present working directory. Okay. Now we will talk about the file system hierarchy. So ls command we use to list the files. If we run the ls command on the top level directory or the root directory, you can see a list of subdirectories there. So these are the directories which are inside the slash directory. Or if I run ls-lh command like this, they will show up in form of a column. Now we will come to know the use of each and every directory which is showing up here in the output of ls-lh command. AFS is there, bin is there, boot is there, dev is there, etc is there, home is there, lib is there, lib64 is there, media is there, mnt is there, opt is there, proc is there, root is there, run is there, sbin is there, srv is there, sys is there, tmp is there, usr is there, var is there. So these are the subdirectories which are available on RHEL 10 machine. In majority of Linux machines, 80% of these directories will show up there. You can find some more additional directories or a few less number of directories depending on the flavor or the version of the machine that you are using. In case of Windows machine, let me take you to my Windows machine. In this C directory or in this C drive, we are having the operating system. Windows 10 is installed or Windows 11 is installed. That is currently I'm using on this machine. So these are the subdirectories which are present in the C drive of my Windows 11. So you can find program data, you can find program files 86, users, Windows. In the same way, on a typical Linux machine, you will find these directories. Okay, now we will talk about each and every directory that is showing up here in detail. So just created a document here for your convenience. Look at this. / is the parent of all the directories. The very first directory which is showing up there in RHEL 10 is AFS. It is relatively a new directory. It is not available on RHEL 9, RHEL 8, RHEL 7. It is only visible in RHEL 10 beta. So this is the directory which is showing up here for Andrew file system volume. It is optional. It is only available in RHEL 10 beta. So it is used for mounting the Andrew file system volumes. So there are chances that RHEL 10 will support Andrew file system volumes. So that's why they kept this directory here in this location. Although this directory is blank. Let me show you. If I list the contents of this directory, nothing will show up. It means this directory is empty. Okay. Now we will talk about this /boot directory. The boot directory contains the bootloader files and kernel images necessary for booting the system. So boot directory contains the bootloader files, the kernel images which are required at the time of booting, and files are copied on RAM from this location when we boot the machine. What are the contents of boot directory? /grub2 directory is there, which is for the grub2 bootloader configuration. Init RAM fs image files are there, which are used as the initial RAM disk images during the boot process. And VM liners, these are the kernel image files used at the time of booting. Now let me take you on my machine and let me list the contents of this boot directory. Look at this. grub2 directory is there, which is for the grub2 bootloader configuration. VM liners files are there. These are the kernel images which are loaded on RAM at the time of booting. And init RAM fs files are there, which are copied on RAM at the time of booting. What are the uses of these files? I will teach you at the time of the boot process. So you don't need to worry about why this file is there, what is the use. So all those things will get covered there. Now let's move to the next directory, which is /etc. /etc is a system-wide configuration files for system and applications. So all the configuration files are present in the /etc directory. And this etc directory generally contains fstab, passwd, ssh, sysctl.conf. So there are a few files which are typically found in the etc directory. Now let me show you the contents of etc directory. Look at this. A lot of files and directories are showing up there. Look at this. Let me check whether fstab is there or not. Look at this. fstab file is there. Similarly, I will check for the passwd file. It is available there. It contains the password information for the users. fstab contains the mount point details. So similarly, all the system-wide configurations file will be present in this location. Now we move to the next directory, which is lib. It contains essential shared libraries required for the binary files in bin and sbin. If you list the contents of /bin directory, this /bin will show you the binary files. Binary files means executable programs. These files are here so that we can execute the commands. How? Again and again, I'm running the ls command. So this ls command is working because of the binary file. How? Let me take you to this bin directory and let me show you. There is a ls binary file present. Because of this ls binary file, we can execute the ls command. Similarly, for the cd command, you will find cd binary file. Look at this. This is the program with which we are able to execute the cd command. So these are the binary files. These are the programs which are used by the users so that they can execute the commands. But in order to execute the commands, these binary files require some libraries. So those libraries are generally found in the /lib directory. These are the shared libraries required by the binaries located in the /bin and /sbin. So if we go to the /lib directory and list the files there, we can see the details of the libraries. Just a minute. So there you will find multiple directories and files. So all these are libraries which are required by the other programs. Okay. For example, if I take you to the lib64, look at this. These are the libraries which are required by the binary files. So if we are using 64-bit libraries for 64-bit binary files, they will be located in the lib64 directory. If we are using 32-bit binary, then the libraries used by those binaries are generally found in the lib directory. So in case of 32-bit binaries, libraries which are required, they are found in the lib directory. For 64-bit binaries, they are located in the lib64 directory. So lib64 and lib, both these directories are used for the libraries. Then the next directory is the media directory. Media directory is used as the mount point for the removable media such as USB devices, CDs, DVDs. So in case if we want to mount some removable disk or removable media that will be mounted on the media directory. Let me show you. If I go to this media directory and list the contents, nothing is there because we have not mounted any removable media here. Let me attach the ISO image to this machine. So I'll go to this removable devices. I'll click on connect. As soon as I executed the lsblk command, I can show you the SR0 size is showing up as 6.5 GB. Let me check where it is mounted. So I can run the df-h command for the mounted file systems. Can we see it here in the output of this command? So it is not mounted. So we can manually mount it. Let me show you how can we mount it. Mount /dev/sr0/media. Look at this. Now it is mounted on /media. If I execute the df-h command, look at this. The removable ISO image is mounted on the media directory. And if we go to this media directory now, we can actually list the contents of the ISO image or the DVD that we have mounted. So these are the files and directories which are present in the ISO image of RHEL 10. So this media directory can be used as the mount point for the removable media. So we can mount CD-ROM, USB devices there. The next directory is the MNT directory. MNT directory is the temporary mount point for the file system. So for manual mounts, you can use it. Like I just mounted the ISO image on the media directory. If I want to mount it on some other mount point, I can use the MNT directory as well. Let me unmount media and let's mount it back on MNT directory. So now you can see in the output of df-h command, the DVD is mounted on the /MNT directory now. So the MNT directory is the manual mount point which we can use. We can use it for the removable devices or we can use it for the other disks or the file systems. The next directory is the OPT directory. OPT directory is the optional third-party software and applications directory where we can actually install the softwares and applications. Currently, it must be empty. So let me show you. If I go to this OPT directory and list the contents, nothing is there. That means the OPT directory is currently empty because we have not installed any third-party software there. Then comes the proc directory. It is the virtual file system providing runtime system information. So generally process related information is stored in the files which are present in the proc directory. It contains the files which are continuously getting updated from the kernel itself. So proc directory contains the process related informations. If I go to the proc directory and list the files, a lot of files and directories are present there which are actually getting updated from the kernel only, or these are used in the processes which are running in the machine. So proc contains the process related files or process related data. Like CPU info, mem info is there. If you want to check, you can run the command cat proc CPU info. So this will give you the CPU information of your machine. Mem info will give you the memory related information. Okay. So don't need to worry about these files. We will cover all these files in detail in the upcoming time. The next directory is the root directory. Root directory is the home directory for the root user or the administrator. If we go to this root directory and list the files, only anaconda-case.cfg file is present, which is for the kickstart installation. But there are some hidden files as well, like basrc, bas profile. So these are the profile related files which are present here to keep the environment variables and other settings for the root user. So this /root user, it can keep the data in this location. So the root directory /root directory, it is the home directory for the root user. Okay. Then the next directory is the run directory. Run directory contains the runtime data for system services and processes. It is the volatile data and cleared at the boot. So this directory generally contains the UTMP file, systemd files, log file for the volatile data. Like suppose I want to check the record of user logins, then I can look for the UTMP file there in the run directory. So if I go to this run directory and list the files, I can see the files and directories present over there. So these are the runtime data, which is volatile. Suppose I want to check the contents of UTMP, I cannot read this file because this file is not a text file. So I can use the strings command to run or to read the contents of UTMP. So it contains the record of the login users. So the information that we are getting here by running the w command, similar information we are able to see in this file. So don't worry, we will cover all these things in the upcoming time. Just keep in mind that /run directory contains the runtime data for the system services and processes. The next directory is the sbin directory. Sbin directory contains the system binaries essential for the system administrator or the root user only. So sbin contains the programs which are only executed by the root or the admin user. If I go to the sbin directory and list the files there, so these are the programs, these are the executable files which are only executable from the root user or the admin user. Like, have a look at this, like user add command. If I want to add another user in this machine, I can execute this command, user add Vikas. So I'm able to execute this command because I'm running it from the root user. But in case if I log in as a normal user and I execute this command, so this command will not execute. It will say permission denied because I'm trying to execute a file which is not executable for me, which requires root privileges. So we are able to execute the user add command from the root user only. And that file is located in the sbin directory. So sbin contains system binaries and essential tools or the executable programs for the admin or the system users. The next directory is the srv directory. Srv directory, it contains the data for the system services provided by the system, such as web services, FTP servers, etc. In our case, we have not configured any of these services, so no data is present in this location, no files are there. In case if we are using this machine as a server to provide any service like web services or FTP services, then this file in this directory can be used to keep the data for the system services provided by this machine. Suppose we are using this machine as the FTP server. So there we can find a file related to FTP in this location. it is just to improve the performance. It can be used as a cache for those services. So that's it. The next directory is the sys directory. Sys directory is the virtual file system providing kernel and system related information. If I go to this location and list the files there, I can see block, bus, class, dev, devices, firmware, fs, hypervisor, kernel, module, power. So there are many subdirectories present in this location. So this slash directory is the virtual file system providing kernel and system related information. Like if I want to get the information related to the system devices, I can go for sys devices location. This is the location. So these are the devices which are attached in our machine. So there are separate folders for them. Okay. So sys directory is very important. It contains the virtual file system providing kernel and system related information. The next directory is the TMP directory. TMP directory stores temporary files and they are generally cleared on reboot, or it depends on how we define the settings for the TMP directory. So we should only use this directory to keep the temporary data. We should never store the important data in this location. So this is just for the temporary purpose. Suppose we want to unzip a file, we can use it. We want to keep some temporary data there. We want to make some testing. So for those tasks, we can use this directory. So TMP directory, although it plays a vital role, but it generally do not keep the important data there. So it is generally showing this type of folders there, temporary files there, and sometimes on reboot, this data will be erased. Then the next directory is the USR directory. USR directory contains the user utilities, applications, and the libraries. So if I go to this USR directory and list the files, I can see there bin, games, include, lib, lib64, libexec, local, sbin, share, src. A lot of directories are showing up there in this location. So the USR directory, it contains the user utilities, applications, and the libraries. Bin directory there, it contains the binaries for the user applications, like if you are using the ls command, mkdir command. So it is for that purpose. Lib contains the libraries which are generally used by the binaries there in the USR bin and USR sbin. Similarly, for 64-bit binaries, we have a separate lib64 which contains the 64-bit libraries. Okay, one more thing, if you run the ls-lh/ command, you will find that the lib and lib64, similarly bin and bin64, these are actually the shortcuts to this location. Actually, the original files are in this location, USR bin and USR sbin, but we can access them from directly using these directories. It is showing the arrow mark there for bin, sbin, lib, and lib64. Why? Because on older version of Linux machines, we were using bin, lib, lib64, and sbin, but nowadays those are moved to this location. So the developer is providing a shortcut. Actually, the files are in this location, USR sbin, USR bin, but they are accessible using these directories as well. So shortcuts are showing up there. The exact location is USR bin and USR sbin, or USR lib or USR lib64. Then the next directory is the var directory. It contains the variable data like logs, spools, temporary files. So if we go to this location and list the files, we can see the files and directories which are present in this location. All these are the variable data files. Suppose we want to check the logs, then we can go to this logs directory and list the files for different type of logs. So where directory contains the logs or those files which are growing over time or which are continuously changing. Then the next directory is the home directory. Home directory contains the home directories for the regular or the normal users. Suppose I go to this home directory and list the contents. I can see the subdirectories which are used by the Vikas Nehra and the other users. So the data of Vikas Nehra user can be found in this location. So the home directory contains the home directories for the normal user accounts. So these are the directories which are used in the RHEL 10 machine. I have mentioned their details here in the listing format. Root directory, boot directory, etc, lib, lib64, media, mnt, opt, proc. You can go through this document. Okay. Now the assignment for you. At the end of this session, you have to create a virtual machine in VMware in your personal computers. And there you need to install RHEL 10 using the custom partition option. Means you need to manually create the mount points there: root, boot, swap, and EFI. Then you need to remotely log in into your machine through SSH. You can use either PuTTY or MobaXterm, or even if you want, you can use the Windows CMD for that purpose. Let me show you. If you want to remotely access the machine from Windows CMD, you can easily do that. How? SSH root @ and the machine IP address you can write there. Provide the root password, and that's it. This is how you can log in into your Linux machine from the Windows command prompt. Look at this. If you don't want to use MobaXterm or PuTTY, you can directly use the Windows command prompt for that purpose. Okay. After that, you are requested to go through all these directories which are showing up there under the root directory in RHEL 10 machine. So just go through each and every directory, list the contents, and take a note of everything. Okay. So that's it from my side for today's session. If you have any questions, you can ask me.